Hi everyone, it's me, Tim. Today I want to talk about game punishments, where the player does something in the game and gets punished for it. This is from a question that someone left in the comments, and I'll read it in a second, but I could have sworn I'd done this. I was absolutely positive. I spent 5 or 10 minutes searching my channel so I could just link him to the video. Couldn't find it, and that's when I realized I think I was insane in the membrane. I've never done a video on game punishment. So let's talk about it. First, let's start with the question from Threep666, who asked, as a game designer, I was curious what your thoughts are as to how to design and implement game punishments. How can you ensure that a punishment feels fair to the player and does not discourage them from continuing to play or to play in a cheesy fashion such as save scumming? For example, I was recently playing a game and found out that when I died, I permanently lost some of my items. I didn't know about the mechanic ahead of time, and it was quite discouraging. Other things I've encountered in games that seem too harsh are things like permanent debuffs or stat losses for botching a quest. Also, to be clear, I'm talking only about punishments that affect players who are playing the normal version of a game, not something like hardcore mode where the player knowingly opts into a punishment system. Thank you, Threep. That's not just a good question, but thank you for asking it in enough detail. I know exactly what you want and what you didn't want, which is not a discussion of difficulty modes. Let's back up a little bit and talk about what game punishment is. This reward punishment model is psychologically called the carrot stick approach to getting players to behave the way you want them to. Every designer wants the player to experience their game in the most fun way. And they use a combination of carrots, rewards, and sticks, punishments, to guide players in the direction they want them to go. Some games feel like they're all carrot. The example I like to give there is after playing EverQuest for years, which had some huge sticks. The biggest example I can remember from that, and this happened to me 20 years ago, was I gained a level and got a teleport to a new continent, a city on a new continent I'd never been to that was very hard and lengthy to get to. I teleported there, walked outside the city expecting a newbie zone, got jumped by something high level, and killed. That death made me lose experience, because EverQuest was all about sticks. I lost experience, which made me lose the level, which made me lose that teleport spell. So I reappeared where I had bound, back on the other continent, and I had to make my way slowly through running and ships and it took hours to get back to where I'd gone instantly with the spell. Jumping to World of Warcraft from EverQuest, totally different game. It felt like it was all carrot. I know when I say that to some people, they're like, no, there's punishment. The sticks in WoW are very small, and the carrots are very big. Basically, they get the players to do what they want by rewarding them to do what they want, rather than punishing them to do what they don't want. So it may be if you do this, doing this thing gets you experience points, or gets you items, or finishes a quest. Doing these other things doesn't do any of those things. So you can do them, but many players go, well, that's a waste of time, which is a punishment in itself. This is generally known as, in psychology as positive reinforcement, and in general, it works very well. Sometimes negative reinforcement, though, in particular situations, is something you need to do. Negative reinforcement is usually used when it prevents a behavior from becoming worse. So if you attack someone, say in a town in a role-playing game, and the guards come at you, but you can make them stop, as long as you didn't kill anyone, you can make them stop by putting your weapon away. That's an example of a negative reinforcement that's under your control to stop before you do something even worse, like killing someone in the town. And then the guards won't stop their attack you until you're dead. So there is a place for the negative reinforcement, but I wanted to talk about that a little bit so people weren't going, well, what about negative reinforcement? So I also want to give a caveat, and 3666 mentioned this. Some people will avoid all forms of punishment by reloading. And that's usually a fairly small group, but there's a bigger group that will avoid some punishment by reloading. They have a threshold. It's like, I don't mind losing a little money. Oh, you took XP from me? No, I'm reloading. Everybody has this threshold, and they will go back. This is a huge difference, by the way, between tabletop role-playing game design and computer role-playing game design, that when I see people try to make the jump from one to the other, the use of save games to avoid any kind of punishment, can't do that in tabletop. People do it all the time in computer games. Similarly, stories have to be designed differently. Classes have to be designed differently because it's a different medium. That's a whole other thing. So let's talk about how you can put game punishment into your game in a way that may make the most number of players accept it, recognize it for what it is, and accept it. I think a big thing, which Threep666 pointed out, was just making them fair. These punishments should fit the crime, so to speak. If the player does something small and gets a huge punishment for it, it seems unfair. It seems unfair that you might pick something up and suddenly you're being attacked. And if your player even so much as auto attacks back, then suddenly the guards are all jumping on you and you may be killed. For what? For clicking on something. Which leads me to something else unfair, which a lot of games do, which is it's very easy to accidentally trigger a punishment. It may be the default that if you click on someone, it attacks them. But then you're walking up to a town and you see a guard and you click on them to talk to them and you attack them and bam, suddenly you're being attacked and you're being killed. Or it may be that if you click off of something in the world, if you just click into the world, it throws whatever item you're holding. I've mentioned that happened to me in Ultima Underworld, where I went to give an item to an NPC. The NPC animated and turned, and I ended up throwing it past him into lava, where the item was destroyed. My original example of accidentally picking something up. If you just go to look at an item and you accidentally click on it and it picks it up and that's marked as stealing and then suddenly everybody's attacking you, those are little things you did, sometimes completely accidentally, that triggered a huge negative response in the game. Players will react to that badly because it seems unfair. It seems like your game's UI tricked them into now getting this horrible punishment on them. And they probably won't accept that, and that will trigger a lot of them to save scum. This leads me to the other thing that I think is important, and I think Threep even alluded to this in his question, that you have to telegraph the punishment. Having a punishment happen to you that you had no way of knowing would be applied kind of feels unfair in the sense of you had no way to take that into account. For example, did someone warn you that going into some place was going to be trespassing? Or if you did walk into it, before you immediately get attacked by everybody in there, did somebody go, hey, you need to get out of here, you're trespassing? Having a warning like that, and then the player can say, I will back up and leave, versus, I don't care. If they then attack you, the player feels some agency in that result. Where if they just attack you the moment you cross some invisible boundary, that can feel unfair. It also can be, if what's happening to you that's a punishment is the result of something you did consciously, is the result something you expected. For example, if you're playing in a game that has jails and you see people in the jails and there's guards everywhere, you might have the expectation, oh, if I do something bad, I might be jailed. So then if you do something bad and they jail you, that's something you could have figured out and you could have expected and maybe even planned for. So let's say, okay, so we've talked about making punishments fair and making them telegraphed. But I think the other best way to get the most people to accept a punishment is to combine it with some kind of reward. We did this in Fallout with the trait system. Everything bad had something good glued to it together, and you couldn't get one without the other. If you picked a trait, you got something good and something bad. Similarly, but that was all character creation. Later on, years later, in Outer Worlds, the flaws worked in a similar way, but they happened while you were playing the game. The game saw something that you kept doing that was negative. You kept getting attacked by robots. You kept falling and taking damage. And so it said, hey, if you want to make that a flaw, something that I'm going to make easier to happen to you or harder for you to avoid, here it is, but you get some extra perk points. It was something glued to it that made that punishment feel more rewarding as well. And you could always say no. You could say, I don't want to do that. Almost any RPG, whether you design it with flaws or traits or whatever, you can still do that by making sure that rewards for finishing quests can be mixed. For example, you may be doing a quest, and when you complete it, you rescued the prince, you killed the bandits, you found the orb of the evil necromancer. The person who asked you to do this may give you some money, but it also may say, oh, well, now this other side hates you. The kidnappers hate you. The bandits don't like you. The necromancer whose orb you stole doesn't like you. And that's glued in with the quest. It's glued to the positive reward of the quest, which is, if you want to solve this quest, there's going to be a punishment attached to it too. And usually that's fine if it's somehow telegraphed to you. If you're told, well, you're not going to be very popular among the bandit groups when they find out you're going around systematically killing all the bandit leaders. Or if you steal from that necromancer, he's going to hate you. Now you can kill him, but that's a lot harder than sneaking in and stealing it. So that kind of punishment reward system is kind of built in, and I like that. Anyway, those are the 3 ways I think you can get punishments into games. You can make them fair, you can telegraph them, and you can combine punishment and reward into one packaged result. So I hope that answered your question, Threep666.